Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 969. I start off with d4 here. Opponent went knight f6, went c4, then he went to e6, go knight c3, and he goes bishop b4. So I'm playing normally here, and he has selected the Nimzo-Indian defense. I play e3, which is the Rubinstein variation. You can see queen c2, also quite popular here, probably more common at the top levels. But this is a fine way to play as well. And then he took. Taking right away is a bit unusual, although Black's troubles really come later, so I couldn't call this a fatal mistake, but it's a slight mistake because normally Black will wait for White to play a move like a3 to kick the bishop before taking. So there's no hurry to take that knight, and it saves White a tempo to take right away. So that's why you don't see that this often. And then he can follow up with c5 here. Did I look at that? Yeah, so this actually would turn into a pretty normal position if you were to play c5 here. Bishop d3, you could go d6. I go knight f3. He goes knight c6, a key move in this structure, d6 and knight c6. And this is a fine position. So nothing really has gone wrong with Black's play just yet, but he's playing a couple of slack moves. Castles here is also, I would put it in that category. You kind of want to undermine that center right away, get to work undermining it. Now we're not quite out of the opening book. We sort of wander in and out of the opening book here. It was just one game. Let's see. Yeah, d6 has been played before. He finally plays c5, which is the right idea. I go knight f3. He goes d6 here. I castle. And then he played b6. If he had played knight c6, once again, that's still a key move in this position, and we would be in a normal position, and Black would have decent chances. After b6, actually, White's chances are pretty good because of this move e4. I get this pressure on the center, and I think we're really out of the book at this point. Yeah. After e4. The normal response is e5 to stop me from kicking this knight away. But in this case, it just loses a pawn. And it's all because he never got in that knight c6 move. So that's what he had to do. That was his mistake in the opening, was not getting in that knight c6 move soon enough and spending an extra tempo on that pawn move b6. So other than that, I would say, that was the only real mistake in the opening. There were other moves that were a little bit slack, but still playable. But after b6, Black's position is really pretty bad. Anyway, so he can't answer e4 with e5, so he has to play something else. He took, and this is, given that Black is worse, these are reasonable moves. And in fact, there was a point here where I thought I was just winning after e5. But there is, in fact, still a defense for Black. Now, Black is going to be worse in any case, but it's not hugely worse and still a playable position. So can you find a defense for Black in this position? And there's actually only one move here that defends this position for Black. Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. Black's defense here is bishop to e4. You need to shut down the bishop on this diagonal. Get rid of the threat of bishop takes h7, as we saw happen in the game. And this is the only move that is playable here. If I take the bishop, he'll take back with the knight, and he's okay. If I take the knight, he can take my bishop. So actually, the chess engine gives this line where I play bishop h3. He takes the bishop. I take the rook, he takes back, and I take the knight. So it's still going to be worse for Black, but at least Black can play on in this position. He's down the exchange, but he's starting to get some pieces out. I don't know actually what Black's next move is. Does he trade queens and develop the knight, or does he play something else? But anyway, that is the best that Black can do here. And there's no guarantee that I would find this bishop a3 move. I might just trade, in which case it's really almost even. But instead he moved the knight, and any knight move loses here. So this is the setup for the Greek gift sacrifice. When you have the queen on this diagonal, you have the bishop on this diagonal. I mean, it doesn't have to be on exactly that square. It could be here, it could be on C2 or B1 or E4, but it's the diagonals that are important. And you have the knight ready to jump into the G5 square. And it's important that the G5 square is not under black's control. If black still had a dark squared bishop, let's erase some of those lines. If black still had a dark squared bishop there, then after the knight moved away, black would have control of the G5 square, and the sacrifice wouldn't work. But when you have these elements, you have these pieces on the right squares, or on the right diagonals, and you have control of the G5 square, so you can follow up the sacrifice with the check, then you should always try and calculate this line. And it's almost always going to turn out to be good for white. So, but the key is, controlling that square and also chasing away this knight, which is the defender of H7. You have to chase away the defenders of H7 and have control of the G5 square. So anyway, he dropped his knight back here, but it would have gone badly for him no matter where the knight went. And I played the sacrifice, and he didn't take, but just to show how this works, he can take, and then the knight comes in here with check. And sometimes black can sneak out this way, but it doesn't really work here because the pawn on E5 takes this flight of square away from the king, so my queen can come up to D3 and check on this diagonal and chase him back. So he's going to be in trouble in any case. So king G8 is the move that's as good as any. And then the queen comes out. And then the typical move here, I mean, there's an immediate mate threatened. So typical move here is to get the rook out of the way. And I just wanted to point out this particular tactic, or sequence. This is the best way to finish it off, and it's something to keep in mind. You don't run in and give the check right away because the king might manage to sneak out somehow. Actually, looks like it won't be so easy in this case, but even stronger is to take this pawn first. And you'll see why in a minute. King goes here. I mean, it's a free pawn, so why not take it? But there's a point to taking it. Now you come in here with the check. King runs here, check here, the king runs away. Notice he still can't go to the F7 square because the knight controls it. And that leaves the G pawn undefended. And now when you play queen takes G7, because you got rid of that pawn on F7, you have a check here. And in this case, it's actually a mate because the king has nowhere to run to. So that's it. That's the whole idea of the Greek gift sacrifice. Let's show the best defense here, though. After the check, king here, queen H5. The best defense is bishop here. Once again, taking over that key diagonal. But this just, it just distracts my knight, but gives up a piece. So this will be losing in the long run. It just is a way to survive and not succumb to the immediate mate. Anyway, he played king takes. Oh, he played king H8 rather than taking, which maybe allows him to last a bit longer. I play knight G5 anyway, and this turns out to be a good decision. Sometimes you want to just retreat the bishop here and say, okay, good, I've taken away a pawn on one of his pawns on the king side. I'm material up, so let's just go back and then play on. But in this case, continuing the attack by bringing a knight forward and defending the bishop, it's also opening the diagonal for the queen. This is very strong. So if he had, for example, played F6, I can just bring the queen out to H5, and now there's a queen and bishop mate. I don't need the knight anymore. He can take the knight or play some other move, but he's going to be in big trouble just with the queen and the bishop there. So he tried G6, probably as good a try as any at this point, and I took it, which the chess engine flags as a mistake. So the best way to continue here is queen to G4. Well, he still can't take the bishop, and what is he going to do? The line given by the engine was this: king G7. I guess the idea is to bring the rook over and start chasing my pieces away, but I can immediately strike with knight takes f7. And now the knight is attacking the queen, so he doesn't have time to take this bishop. So he takes the knight, and then I take here with check, and you can see things are looking pretty bad for black. If he goes to the corner, I'll just take the rook. So if he wants to keep some compensation, I mean, after I take the rook, just to finish the thought here, I'm material up and I'm attacking, so this is just got to be winning. Let's see, I have 2 rooks and 2 pieces. Yeah, I'm up the exchange, plus his king is exposed, and I have more pawns, and I'm attacking. So that's, that's going to be winning. So the other move would be to put the king over here to f8 to try and hold on to some material, but then the queen can get to the back rank. See, the king goes here, and then the bishop comes out, and I'm going to be winning some more material here. So that is that move here. That all started with queen to g4. That's the most accurate move here to continue the attack. But I saw this idea. I can just take this pawn. This leads to an advantage, probably a winning advantage, but it's not as quick or severe. So anyway, he takes, and then I can take on e6, forking the queen and the rook. And then he played this funny move, queen c7, and of course I can still take the queen, but I took the knight instead because I didn't even consider that he would play a move like that, and I just went ahead and played the move I planned. He should have played queen e7, and then I take the rook. And so we would get to a similar kind of position as we had in the game. Let's see, he should probably take here with the knight, but what did he play? Oh, he played queen up to take a moment to make a threat. If I overlook that, it might turn the tables. But I did notice that, and I also noticed I could take here with check. And then, of course, he could take my knight. So let's look at this. After he takes my knight, I would play f3. And if we count the material, I have 2 rooks and a bishop, as well as the queen. He has 1 rook and 3 pieces. So basically, he's got these 2 knights against a rook. But I also have all these pawns, and I have an exposed king to work against. So I'm going to play moves like bishop b2 and pawn to just push that pawn forward to get it out of the way and open up this diagonal. And this should be over pretty quickly. So it's still a winning edge here no matter what he does. Anyway, he went king g7, and then he saw that it was hopeless, and he resigned. The best move here for me is just to bring my knight back to f4, defend against the mate threat, and stay. Well, I would actually be material up in this case. I would be up the exchange instead of being down, but down 2 pieces for a rook. But anyway, he just decided to resign. I was thinking about the move queen here, which defends against the mate and looks at his king. But well, once again, he could take my knight. I would still be winning in that position, but it wouldn't be as quick as just why not just save the knight. Anyway, he decided to resign here, and that is how the game ended. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I actually thought that was a very instructive game. So just be sure to remember this this configuration of pieces when you have the queen, knight, and bishop in this configuration. The sacrifice on h7 is always in the air, and you just push this pawn forward to chase the knight away, and you can often accomplish this in your own games, and also if you're defending. Remember this idea of bringing the knight to c6 and pushing the pawn to e5 to shut down that attack. Very important ideas in these queen's pawn openings. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.